Hey guys, what is up? Kid here of Burn 1 with the Shadowverse Evolved channel, bringing you another deck profile, this time on my Ramp Dragon list that I piloted to a 4-0 at my shop qualifier. Unfortunately, I did not beat out top 8. I made some misplays on the turn 2 against Swordcraft player I was playing against, and that costed me the game, unfortunately. But this list is very solid, very consistent, and very powerful. So, let's check this list out. Alright, so this is the list here. We'll just get right into it. Obviously, 3 of Bellbringer Angel. This is a very good card to slow down aggro. We play it as a 3 of. It also draws cards. It's also a cheap ward to protect like Fortes and things like that later in the game. We play it 1 of the Evo. It's a very good card to turn 1 Bellringer, turn 2 Evo Bellringer Ringer Angel to pop something on their board, since on Evo you select the enemy follower and deal 2 damage to it, and you still have the ward plus last word draw a card. Very good card. Only time this card is really rough is in the Haven matchup, when you probably most games do not play it out early. Maybe you play the first one out, but after that you hold all the other ones just for like turns of like slamming multiple on the board so they can't easily clear it. Next, we play a 3 of Blazing Breath, probably the best 1-drop quick spell in the game in my opinion. I don't know why this deals 4 damage on overflow when other classes have to work so much harder to deal 4 damage for 1 play point. And the fact that this is a quick spell lets us interact with our opponent early on. Against aggro, it's good because it still is Angelic Snipe for 1 essentially, until you get to overflow state. Then it just deals 4 for some horrible reason. I don't know why. This card is too powerful. It probably should have only dealt 3 damage at overflow, not 4. Next, we play 3 of Shapeshifting Mage. This is a very cheap 2-cost 2/2 that gains +3/+3 at overflow. So later in the game, this is a 2-drop 5/5 that your opponent has to respect. Earlier in the game and later in the game, for 3 play point total or 2 play points and an Evo point, we get the Evo form. This is our cheap spot removal for big creatures that we do not want to deal with, because it has a Sail and Bane, and one of our outs to our opponent doing things like playing Lucifer and not engaging it. This is how we get rid of it, to prevent them from next turn Evoing it, hitting us for 8 and then 4 for the effect itself. Very powerful card. I've loved this card like forever. I think playing it any less than 3 is a mistake. Evo deck, you probably just play 2. The fact that this is such a cheap 2-drop 5/5, well, even without Evoing it, is still a threat for your opponent to deal with. That's 25% of your starting life total. Very big. Dragon Oracle, 3 of. This is the way we accelerate our play points, and occasionally we can draw a card off of it. Most of the time, late game we draw a card. Early game we just want to develop our play points so we can be ahead of the curve against our opponent. Next, I play 2 Ayala instead of 3. Playing 2 is a little bit greedy. Anything less from that is extreme being greedy in my opinion. Early on, I wasn't so sure about this card, because drawing this card late in the game really sucks. But then the more I played the game, the more you realize that the only matchup you have to really worry about this card not doing anything for you is Havencraft, because they can banish it away. Everyone else has to respect this card and either remove it, otherwise you get to just start hitting them in the face, getting them closer and closer to lethal range with Forte or Genesis Dragon. Or you can run this into something else, because it does have a cell, so you can attack something else and pop it yourself while removing something. Very, very powerful. And then, on the last word, you get the extra maximum play point by 1, increase it by 1, which is very powerful. It's essentially our 4th and 5th copy of Dragon Oracle. 3 of Dragon Warrior. This is our 2-for-1 follower. It's very strong. I think playing any less than 3 is probably a mistake, unless you're playing a lot of early board clears like the Wings card or maybe even Conflag. Then I can see why you would cut this down from like 3 to maybe like 2 or maybe even 1, but I feel like 2 would be the lowest I'd ever go. We play 2 of the Dragon Warrior Evo in our Evo deck. On Evo, you select an enemy follower, deal 3 damage to it, and then since you Evoed it, it has Rush, so that's another 4 damage into another follower that you want to get rid of. Or this is 4 play points to get rid of a 7 health follower if need be. Very solid card, and like I said, I'd be very surprised if people cut this card completely or something like that. It's such good value. Anitra is another card that gives you lots of value. I played it as a 2 of. If I had a 3rd copy, instead of selling my 3rd copy off, I might have figured out a way to play a 3rd copy in this list, because the more I played it, the fact that you get of like on curve turn 3 plays Anitra, have a 5/5 dragon token in your EX area, and now your opponent has to look at Anitra and remove it as soon as possible. Otherwise, next turn you have the option of just using 2 play points to bring out a 5/5 with Rush immediately. Otherwise, if they do remove it, 5/5 Dragon Follower for 4 on turn 4 is still a very big threatening creature or a follower that they have to deal with. And if they don't, that's like 5 face damage next turn, or blow up something else, or run it in and trade into something else. And it's very, very strong. And then at Overflow, you can use its effect to pay 2, and then it recovers the 2 play points that you use to bring out the dragon. So you essentially get the dragon for 3. So you get 8/7 worth of stats for 3 play points. Is very, very strong. This is also one of the ways we can go wide with our board in one turn by like doing something like Anitra and then into a Dragon Guard. Is a very common line where you get 3 huge creatures essentially your opponent has to deal with, and if they don't deal with it, that's a lot of damage that they'll be pushing through. A lot of times that is enough to close out games, because that is 14 face damage if they don't remove anything and they don't have any wards. I'd be very surprised if they don't get rid of something or have wards up at that point. But this is also a way we can force our opponents, like in Haven and stuff like that, or in classes that can't deal with wide boards very easily. That's how we build up the boards and bait out the huge AoEs or the huge board removals that way. Or when we know they're out of board removals because we put so much pressure, going wide with Anitra feels very, very strong for the amount of play points you're investing. I play a 3 of Serpent's Wrath. This is like part of the consistency of the deck, because at Overflow this does draw your card, but it's still a 3-drop, deal 5 damage even before Overflow, which is very good because this is one of our outs to Runecraft players playing like turn 2 Penguin. They're probably going to still always be able to play Penguin, Evo Penguin, and get 2 discards off of it, but at least you can follow up on your next turn with the 5 damage to their Penguin to remove it, and hopefully that will slow them down enough that you can get in and beat them before they start de-shifting you like that. Next, I play 2 of Path to Purgatory. This is our way we refuel our hand, get as much gas as possible. A lot of times you are just looking for a turn where your opponent didn't develop board very much, or it's late into the game and you just need the gas to get going. Sometimes too, you can also proc its secondary effect, which is at the start of your end phase. If you have 6 or less life total, you can engage this card and send it to the cemetery to deal 6 damage to all the enemy followers on the board. There are times where your opponent makes the mistake of hitting you to 9 or less life total, and they have a very wide board. This is one of the ways where you can refuel, build up a bunch of wars, and then crack this to blow up their entire board. It's happened a few times with me, though it's something you shouldn't really be looking for too often, but it does come up occasionally. Any game where I feel like I resolved Path to Purgatory and didn't really get punished for resolving Path to Purgatory, I feel like I've won that game already, because drawing 3 cards is just so powerful. You get so much resources out of it, and Dragon just needs that draw because we have no way to search or anything like that, and getting this draw just feels so powerful. Next, this is probably the best dragon card in my opinion, Dark Dragoon Forte. We play 2 of the Evo, which is 7/3 follower. It gains Storm and Aura. The normal version only has Storm, and it's a 5/1. This card forces your opponent to always be afraid of losing the game at any point they are at 7 or less life, because they can't interact with this card because it has Aura. It has Storm, so it just 7 face damage out of hand. So if they're not careful and they make one mistake and don't have a ward up, they just instantly instantly hit them for 7 to face. Your opponent is worried about this card once they start hitting 10 or less life. That's when your opponent has to it feels like they have to play around cards that you might not even have in your hand. They're just forced to make weird plays just to not lose the game immediately by not throwing up a ward or something. Dark Dragoon Forte just adds so much to your pressure and the mind game of just immediately losing the game. Next, I play a 3 of Dragon Guard. At first, I liked this card, then I hated this card, but now I like it again, mostly because I've figured out that because I am not playing the board removals like Wings or Conflag for early removal, which honestly might be a mistake depending on your meta. If your meta is very heavy sword, you probably just want to play the board removals like that. But I kind of like playing this more creature-based control plan. So this card feels really good into most aggro matchups, actually every aggro matchup. Anytime you have an opening hand that's like Bellringer Angel, Dragon Oracle, Dragon Guard plus something else. If it's Dragon Warrior, you're set for life, honestly. But you can do plays like Bellringer on one. See if they develop their board at all. If they don't develop their board, that means you don't have to evo this to pop something, which means you can get a free turn to Dragon Oracle, and then you can turn 3 Dragon Guard. And in the aggro matchup at that point, I think developing a Dragon Guard on your turn 3, going into their turn 3, it's too hard and too big for them to deal with immediately, that they're always forced to either spend their entire turn removing it using something they probably didn't want to use, or they had to like trade 2 followers into it just to remove this ward. And any time they leave this ward up, you still get a swing 4 for face and have a 4/5 ward again that they have to deal with. On top of that, when you're in overflow, this becomes a 6/7, which is a hefty ward that everyone has to like deal with essentially, and has an awkward amount of HP pool, which means like dealing 5 doesn't remove it. A lot of board wipes deal, like in Dragon and stuff, only deal 5, so it can survive like through a Fafnir or a Conflag, things like that. It's a very solid card. It's one of the ways we win our aggro matchup, by forcing them to trade 2 cards usually in on their turn 3 to be able to get through this. Otherwise, we can start pressuring their life total or their board again with Dragon Card. I play 2 of Erd. This has been one of my most favorite tech cards. It helps a lot in the mirror match, because if they spend all their play points to develop one big creature, we can set them back a turn by playing Erd and sending it to the EX area, and we don't even have to evo this card to get the value that way, because now they either have to spend another turn to replay the big creature, or they play other cards in their hand. If they spend a turn again playing the same follower that you sent away into their EX area, it kind of signifies that their hand quality is not very good, and they've basically wasted a turn essentially replaying the same card, and that's like a sign that like you can go in for the kill essentially. We play a 1 of the Evo, so whenever need be, we do Evo it to banish the card in their EX area. This is good against like Force, if we need to get rid of like any of their Thornburst or anything like that, if we got to that point. Otherwise, you can send followers there, and then if it's a follower you don't ever want to see again, you can Evo and banish it away so they don't have access to that follower again. You might use this against, for example, Sword, whenever they do, I think it's like Front Guard General or whatever, the big 7-drop that turns into 2 wards when it gets when it's last word. This is how I deal with it. I can Erd it away, then go for face, or if I know I need more than one extra, I need extra turns following this, I don't want them to play it again, then I will Erd, Evo it, and banish it away so I don't have to deal with it again. Next, we play a 1 of Execution. This is how we interact with our other opponents who might have Storm out of hand. If our opponent is greedy like in Dragon and they try to Genesis Dragon you through 4 play points being floated, Execution blows them out because they wasted a turn, did nothing, and then you go into your turn, hit them for face with your own Genesis Dragon or something, and you usually win the game that way. This is also one of the few ways we deal with amulets in the matchups. For example, like Sword, good way to get rid of Banner. Getting rid of Banner is very powerful because it makes it a lot easier for you to deal with their board usually. And then and also like takes away pressure from your life total, obviously. And then also in the Haven matchup, if they develop a turn 5 Holy Sentinel, you can execute it the following turn, or if you have 4 play points open still, you can pop their Holy Sentinel. It's like they wasted a turn essentially. Those matchups, those specific amulets are very annoying for us to deal with because it generates lots of value for both of those crafts. And so popping and getting rid of it feels good every time. Shenlong, 3 of. I think we all know this card's super good, super busted. It's 5-drop on play, draw 2, discard 1. It helps consistency and fix our hand whenever we're digging for any removal or anything like that, or other Path to Purgatory or anything we need essentially. This is the only way we can get more cards into our hand that are basically is not Path or Serpent's Wrath or Bellringer Angel, I guess. And then for 2, we can Evo it, and we play 2 of the Evo. It has Ward still, and on Evo you heal 5. So this card is insane. It not only replaces itself in hand while also giving you extra options by drawing 2 cards. And and like fixing your hand that way. You also heal 5 and have this huge ward that your opponent has to deal with. A lot of times too in the sword matchup and things like that, people are forced to use their execution if they want to get to your face. They have to use their Subakis to pop this and stuff like that. It provides a lot of pressure on the boards, and a lot of times too you can like play this Evo, don't ward it. It's a 5/6 that they have to deal with next turn that potentially go 5 to your opponent's face and then be warded at the end of turn, making it very hard for your opponent to like punish you back that way. It's a very strong card. Yeah, I don't know what else can I say. It's just Shenlong's so good. Dread Dragon I play as a 1/of. This is our spot removal for people who like slam Lucifer and don't engage Lucifer, things like that, or any bigger health creature or followers that we need to get remove. A lot of times this is how we answer Lucifer, though. We also get to develop our own 7/7 on board, so if they don't deal with it also, they have to basically eat 7 face next turn. Also, the fact that it's a 7 drop is like pretty solid because it gives us enough play points to float cross turn if we're at 10 play points to be able to Serpent's Wrath anything that they play. So if we need to blow up a ward, we can get rid of it. If they try to run into it with something, we can usually get rid of it with Serpent's Wrath, which is very good. Gives us options for like a control game plan during their turn. We play 2 of Fafnir. I used to play this as a 3/of. I kind of dropped the 3rd because I've realized a lot of the times, you know, my hand gets too clunky with too many big like board removals and things like that. So Fafnir is one of the only ways that once we get to that point where we're like our turn 7 or something, as long as we get to that point, we can drop Fafnir to clear the board against aggro, against sword usually, and that's usually enough at that point to win the game from there, because we should outvalue our opponent moving forward from that point, because not only do they have to deal with the 7/8, they lost their entire board, and then we can start developing our board and pressuring them over and over again at that point. Like I said, though, I felt like this was the only board-wide removal I really needed in this list. It might be kind of greedy if your locals is like a lot of aggro and a lot of sword, and this is probably not the right idea. You probably want to play this as maybe even 3/of, but you want to play something like Conflag and the other Wings spell to deal with the early aggression. But Fafnir has been very solid as a 2/of. I've drawn it like once almost every game I needed it, essentially. And drawing multiple Fafnirs doesn't always feel that great, so it at 2/of feels good. Finally, I play 1 of Genesis Dragon. Listen, you can get away with playing no Genesis Dragon, but I think at any point you should always at least have 1 in your list, because it always threatens your opponent, because your opponent is always going to be like, crap, I'm at 10 life total, I'm dead to Genesis Dragon if they have it, and so they have to play awkwardly to like dance around your Genesis Dragon, and if they don't have the answer, at least you have this now. And also, I don't ever want to play more than 1 in a list, because 99% of the time if I'm playing this card, it's because it's basically ending the game right now because you didn't have a ward up and you're at 10 life total. And anytime I draw more than 1 of these, when I used to play multiple copies of this card, it felt horrible. My hand just got worse and worse at that point, because a lot of the times if you try to slam Genesis Dragon to get your opponent down, say your opponent's at like 15 or something, you Genesis Dragon them 10 face. After that point, usually it feels like it's impossible to win the game at that point. If they can answer your Genesis Dragon, because you've used all your play points that turn to hopefully get them low enough to like have a follow-up next 1 or 2 turns. Unless you have a guaranteed way, like hitting them with Genesis Dragon for 10 and then like Lucifer Evo the following turn for guaranteed damage or something like that. Playing Genesis Dragon without like ending the game immediately usually is a mistake in my opinion. And like I said, having more copies in your list can clog up your hand, and I do not like that. And like I said, 99% of the time you play Genesis Dragon to end the game immediately. That's it. But yeah, that's the list. This is what I used to go 4-0 at my qualifier. Unfortunately, I did not win out my top 8 matches. Hopefully I go to another qualifier and do very well, but this is the Dragon list I have been grinding with and been enjoying the most. It does well. I feel like it does very well into all matchups. Some of the hard matchups you deal with will definitely be sword, so if you're a very sword heavy meta, you might want to look into making some changes to make the sword matchup way more favorable for you. Like I said, you can look at the wing spell that deals 2 to the whole board, or 3 if you're at overflow, or Conflag is another very good one that deals 5 to everything on the board. Those are some very good earlier board wipes that you can use. The fact that you can Oracle on like 2, and then on your turn 4 you can conflag their board. There is a very powerful move to be doing into like sword. But I've played more for like a creature based board state essentially. So conflag and wings can hurt me as much as it can like help me essentially. And so I opted not to play those cards. That might, like I said, that might be a mistake if your locals is very aggro aggressive. Yeah, have a lot of sword players, or maybe even in some cases if you're playing against a lot of abyss aggro, getting wings in the list is very strong too. But usually against those matchups, like abyss aggro, usually Bellringer, Blazing Breath, Dragon Guard is more than enough to like slow them down enough to the point that you can stabilize and win the game off of Shenlongs and your big creatures. But besides that, hopefully you guys like this list. You know, if you've been tinkering with Dragon and you're not exactly sure what to play, you know, try this list out. Maybe you'll like it, maybe you'll hate it. You know, let me know in the comments below. But besides that, I hope to see you guys in the next video. Later, everyone.